Welcome back to the Cosmic Library, where you can hear more about the greatest stories in the multiverse. I am Jeremy.
And I'm Jesse.
We are doing this show in conjunction with Second Union. To read more about the latest in entertainment, please go to our website at wearesecondunion.com. I apologize, Joanna is out. I'm not sure where she's at the moment, but I hope she's doing well. How about you, Jesse? How are you doing today?
Trying to stay warm. California's actually starting to get cold now.
It's not bad in my section of California. They're still talking about it being in like the 70s this weekend. Of course, I'm not going to be in my section of California this weekend.
70s would be nice.
Yeah, it would be. But I have to go up north. I actually have an appearance at East Bay Pro Wrestling, of all places, in Pacheco, California on Saturday.
Pacheco. Let's say I've heard of Pacheco Pass all the time while growing up, and never realized where the hell that's at. Where the hell is that?
I had to look it up myself. It's like southeast side of the Bay Area. It doesn't look like a bad section or anything. It's just a place I don't think I've been in my travels in the state. So it'll be a learning experience for sure. You know, going to start looking up interesting places to eat, because there's no way I'm going to travel all that way and not find a place to have food. But
sounds fun.
Well, I hope so. I'm still trying to get over a mutual friend of ours talking me into going to Disneyland when I tried not to. I don't know how that works. I'm sure we talked about it at some length like last week, but at the same time, it's like usually if I want to go with somebody, I ask them. In this case, it was like I'm trying to tell people, yeah, we won't do that because it's expensive and we'll just do the comic book convention. Oh, sure. And then we mention or I talk about the three things that are going on in the time between like now and the period we're going to be there, and suddenly it's, oh, okay, well, we'll do that too. What? Okay, I guess I'll start working on a calendar. Yeah, you should do that. What? I don't know. It's just the way things work out sometimes. I am still catching up on storylines. There is one that I really want to share in the reading between us all, but I'm just waiting for one more issue to come out, and that's Once in Future.
Oh, that's that Arthurian comic.
Yeah, that's the one by Boom Studios, and I've read 3 out of the 4 issues I've got in hand, and they have been entertaining to me, at least. But I'm also of the firm mind that I am not the end-all be-all of comic books in opinion, so I'm always curious to hear what other people have to say about the things I've read. There's that, and the second volume of Die is just about done too. That freaky book by Image is pretty much like evil D&D Jumanji.
Yeah, not a fan of that one.
I liked it a lot, but it is dark. There is no other real descriptor for it. That is some dark, moody stuff. I do know that The Wicked and the Divine has come to a close. And we do have something new to talk about in Marvel comic news. They finally revealed the entirety of that new X-Men team.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I'm still having trouble sussing out what's going on there, but we're going to try. So we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll start off with Marvel comic news. Well, actually I should say first, the subject of this week is the first 4 issues of the first volume of Batman White Knight by DC Comics from DC's Black Label. We will get to that after the news of the past week. And we will start with Marvel comic news. All the intellectual properties owned by the House of Mouse and where they are headed in the upcoming months. And Marvel Comics has closed its New York's office.
Really?
Yeah. It has been there for I don't know how long. Their office is at 135 West 50th Street, New York, New York. It was famed for having only one bathroom. And they are closing that office. A lot of people have speculated they're getting ready to make a West Coast move, similar to what Warner Brothers did with DC Comics. And those people were absolutely wrong, because Marvel Comics has closed its New York City office, and they're moving further east.
To?
I know you're asking, how's that possible? Isn't that city like right on the water, right?
Yeah.
Okay, they are moving east and south. 1 block each. I know. They made this sound like this huge thing when they're talking about the story online, but as soon as I finished reading that, it's like, wow, you guys really just baited us in there, didn't you?
Dramatic tension.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not a matter of hating New York City or even the office they were in. It just wasn't working for what they were doing at this point. So
Mean
instead, they
better
will
space or more modern equipment?
probably a bit of both, I would imagine. But yeah, they're moving a couple blocks and they'll be fine. You know, their total move is a few 100,000 meters. I wonder what it costs to have movers take your stuff 100,000, like a few 100 meters.
I don't know. We could call some movers from New York.
I don't think I'd appreciate the conversation. So, no, I'm going to skip that for now. But there is a comic book here, and I wish Joanna was here for this one. I want to read this. I had known that the Doctor Strange comic in Marvel was coming to an end, the current volume, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the one that's taken Doctor Strange into space post the annihilation of magic on Earth in Marvel Comics, and he's relearned a whole group of new skills by going into space and learning astromagics, for lack of a better term. He has come back, he's helped balance things, he's back to being the Sorcerer Supreme, and when his latest volume came to a close, the character is popular enough with another movie coming, I figured he was going to reappear in something. I did not expect the answer to that to be Strange Academy. There's an early
He's going to be a dean?
He's opening a school for magicians. He is aware of the fact that young people grow up, some with innate magic abilities, and no one's actually showing them how to cope or how to harness them, which makes him both dangerous and misaligned.
Is he qualified to be a teacher?
He's a doctor, I guess, technically?
A doctor is one thing.
Yeah, but you do have... I think doctors are held to a higher educational standard than a lot of teachers. But don't worry, he's not doing this alone. According to the cover, he's being joined by his former house assistant and magician in training, Zelda, and Brother Voodoo, another former Sorcerer Supreme.
Huh.
They are hosting a group of at least, it looks like, 10 kids in their first class. And according to the solicits, some of them come from Asgard, some of them come from Jotunheim. One of them is the illegitimate son of Dormammu from the Dark Dimension.
Huh.
And in the center of this all is going to be a young girl named Emily Bright, who's possessed powerful magics since birth. This sounds this sounds cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's being written by Scotty Young, the guy who's famous for doing all those young parodies of Marvel comic characters for covers. And the art is by Humberto Ramos.
Oh, okay.
I like that combination. I really want to read this book at this point. So let me see if there's anything in here about when it's supposed to debut. The series debuts this March.
Oh.
Don't have a firm date, but it's close. Yeah, I mean, I know you're interested. Me, as soon as I saw this cover and read the synopsis, I'm like, okay, I want to read this book. It sounds like a very different tale. I want to know what Asgardians are signing into the school.
You get people from Jotunheim, like ice giants, or...
Well, people may be a broad word, but there's at least one from Jotunheim I can see from the cover. There's going to be a young, like, chunky frost giant who's coming to school.
How do they accommodate someone of his size? And I don't mean because he's fat. The Jotun giants are they're giants.
Yes, but we are also talking about a man whose house on Bleecker Street encompasses I don't know how many levels of reality.
It's bigger on the inside.
It definitely is. But it turns out that Strange Academy is not the only story facing young Marvel characters in the upcoming months. During March 2020, there's going to be a new title called Outlawed. It's a one-shot that's going to outline a new status quo where teen heroes are more or less outlawed in Marvel Comics. And yes, that does include characters like Sam Alexander, Nova, Miles Morales, the second Spider-Man, and Miss Marvel. This whole thing is being done by... the one-shot is by Dr. Eve Ewing, who is the last writer of the Ironheart series, and Kim Jacinto, who's been doing art on the Champions.
Well, why have they become outlawed?
Thankfully CBR talked a bit to Dr. Ewing to find out what this is all about, this one-shot. And she said, quote, "To me, this story isn't about young people being in conflict with the government, but much bigger questions about what we ask of young people, how they're expected to be independent sometimes and subservient other times. Every era of history begins with new challenges and brings new challenges, and young people today are coming of age. Yet we often don't recognize their wisdom and their insights. It's like we get above a certain age and lose all empathy. I just wanted to explore that tension and being superheroes really ups the stakes because they're literally out there saving lives every day, but aren't seen as full people or full citizens. And at the same time, maybe the law maybe the law is a good idea? Maybe it really is for everyone's protection. It's intentionally kind of morally ambiguous, unquote.
I kind of get where he's coming from with that.
So do I. She's making a lot of very salient points in this idea. And apparently, Outlawed is going to introduce a new ongoing status quo that's going to be reflected in books across the Marvel line. Almost every active character who's under age 21, quote, will be affected by the decisions made in Outlawed, and they won't all agree on whether the New World Order is good or bad. But there are real, serious consequences now for those who go against the ruling passed down in Outlawed, and it'll interfere in their lives in a way they've never experienced, leading to some really interesting stories. So there may be unquote. So there may be a schism in just the teen hero community within Marvel Comics. According to the story, the whole thing is going to come about following a devastating tragedy. So it sounds like the inciting event may be similar to like the original Civil War event back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's the feeling I got.
Well, you gotta admit, it takes usually some kind of radical tragedy for people to actually take a hard look at something, at least in American society.
Oh yeah,
So that would be the kind of thing that's going to happen. But I guess that leads to the questions as to who would stand on which side. Because based on what I've read from both like the Avengers and Champions, Miss Marvel strikes me as the type of person who would continue being a hero just because she feels like it's a necessary thing to do.
Hmm.
Miles Morales, he kind of varies depending on what's happened to him recently. Nova, hard-headed.
Yeah. He's gonna do what he's gonna do.
Yeah, but that leads to other characters who have been champions who I'd like to know where they land on this issue. You know, Snowguard, Brawn, shoot, Red Locust, you know?
Viv?
Viv would be a serious question. She is a creature of almost pure logic. I know there's an emotional core in there, but she keeps repressing it. I don't know where she'd hit on this. Although, something tells me with the way she is and the way her father is, she'd probably end up on the law-abiding side. She'd see it as a numerical equation rather than a question of morals.
Yeah. Would this involve like some of the younger X-Men too?
That is a question because technically the younger X-Men are existing in a different nation state. So if this event is not a global law, instead if it's just an American one, technically the X-Men or the junior X-Men are not really subject to these laws unless they hit American soil.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for a large amount of them, it wouldn't really apply to them at all. The X-Men may be the freest group of young heroes in the world after whatever this is.
That's an amazing turnaround is the best word I could come up right now, but
Now, I mean, that doesn't mean they can act with impunity. As soon as they hit the soil, you know, characters like Armor and Honey Badger and, well, I guess now it's Scout and, several others would have to seriously second guess how they approach things. But as soon as they leave U.S. soil, they'd be free to be themselves again.
I'm kind of wondering if the Teenage Heroes will have any allies from the hero community or detractors from it.
You know, this would be one of those weird places where I think Cyclops would be a great person to ask questions about because he's been a young hero, he's been an adult hero, and thanks to the all-new X-Men storyline, he's been a young hero in the modern era as well as the 1960s.
So which Scott would we talking to then?
Well, that's the thing, because those memories have been united into one person. The adult that's currently running around has all of those memories. He'd almost be a terrific person to ask about, or for young people to look up to and ask, what do we do? You know, you've rebelled against the machine twice now. What do we do?
I'm actually curious, my advice come up, but I don't know where Peter Parker's going to stand on all this if he gets involved.
I don't know, and Tony Stark is having this kind of existential crisis, so he's not as central to a lot of the more political machinations in the Marvel comics than he used to be. I don't know if he'd even get involved in this. This sounds like the type of thing where... Actually, now that I think about it, a lot of Marvel's mainstay characters are in very different places from the last couple events. Captain America's wanted for murder. Iron Man is having his existential problem as well as in Lost in Time. Captain Marvel has her own, major league problems to deal with. And the Hulk is not engaging in the Marvel universe to a large degree. as well as
Hmm.
Black Widow's gone underground. I mean, they're in very different places now. I can't even say how they'd respond to these laws.
Huh.
Okay, we've just opened an entire existential question on the second story of this week. I mean, Jesus.
I mean, it is a big question and a big source of conflict for younger people.
Well, it's also a very difficult question because as I think Dr. Ewing intended, there is no clear-cut answer to this.
Yeah,
Because she's right. We do tend to let people grow to a certain age, and then all of a sudden it seems like we determine that they've reached that age where, yes, they're old enough, yet they're also stupid, so we shouldn't listen to them. And that's got to be
a
even more.
weird.
Well, that's got to be more frustrating when you have the powers to make a difference, yet everyone keeps looking down on you.
It's this weird gray area where nothing you do matters. It's very depressing and frustrating to be in.
This sounds like it could be a seminar, frankly, in like a sociology class.
Huh.
Actually, considering the way we treat people who a lot of people refer to derogatorily as millennials, it probably should be a conversation. Moving on, though, it appears Marvel Comics has managed to work a joke into the latest issue of Thor: The Worthy, #1 by Walter Simonson and Mike Hawthorne.
What kind of joke?
Well, do you know what Thor: The Worthy is about?
Not entirely.
Okay, so Thor: The Worthy is more or less a miniseries that has to deal with different Thors in Marvel Comics, and I don't mean a multiverse. What I mean is like the original Thor from like the 1960s, who Thor became in the 90s, Beta Ray Bill, the Jane Foster Thor, super young Thor who predates his adventures on Midgard, King Thor. It's basically one of those places where the different eras of Thors cross over with each other. All right?
Like a Doctor Who's Christmas special.
Kind of, yes. And there's an image from this issue that makes you think that maybe there's been more types of Thors than anyone wants to talk about. Now,
Oh?
I'm going to send you an image of the Jane Foster Thor, and she is talking about time and misuse created by shards, and Mjolnir is going to complete the journey, returning it through the threshold of nothingness. I don't know what exactly she's talking about. But you'll notice behind her a set of images of the different people who have wielded Thor's hammer at different points, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at the left we have Beta Ray Bill, Captain America. It looks like Thunderstrike when he was masquerading as Thor. That looks to be a Andy the Android from the Mad Thinkers, who's holding Mjolnir. Next
Mm-hmm.
to that, I'm having a little trouble making that out. That looks like Throg. But you'll notice
Yeah.
next to that, a man with a spit curl and a cape in shadow holding Mjolnir,
Mm-hmm.
who looks an awful lot like Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Then right next to that is another image of a woman holding a Mjolnir, and on her hip is a golden lasso.
Mm-hmm.
So you
I
get
don't
where
think
the joke is.
I'm not sure it's a joke. I think there's acknowledging the time they decided to do the amalgam comics.
Well, not amalgam. You may well actually there was that short crossover period.
Yeah.
There was a crossover in the 1980s where the Marvel and DC characters actually met each other.
Yep. And I remember Superman flying through space, wielding Mjolnir and Captain America's shield.
I've never actually read it. That was back during
I've
a
not.
period where I was way too young to deal with something like that.
I've not read it myself. I've seen images.
I've seen fan art. I don't know if I've seen images from the comics. So I can't answer that question. I just looked in that and said, well, that's cute.
And as for Wonder Woman, I'm not sure she will, but she I think. Oh no, she did pick it up when she was fighting someone else. I think she was fighting Storm, or but she didn't use it on Storm. Felt it was unfair.
Cute. I couldn't say. Um, I wish I could say I haven't read it simply because it's my usual issues with DC characters, but I just know I was too young to really be interested. I was still
Well,
working out at that period what comics I was reading.
the winner was not dictated by the skills of the characters involved. It was they were dictated by voting. So
Yeah, I remember something about that, about the face-offs and everything, but I just know that there was a crossover where the Justice League did indeed have more power than the amalgamated like Marvel heroes, but they also agreed that the Marvel heroes have a much harder fight because their world seems to be fighting against them. as much as they're fighting for it.
Hmm.
But that's all I know, and I got that from conversations with other nerds, so I've never read it. One Marvel character who is having a serious existential crisis is Conan the Barbarian.
Oh,
Yeah, in the latest issue of his comic, number 11, by Jason Aaron and Mahmoud Asrar, Conan died.
okay.
Well, yeah, but what happens to you when you die?
Get buried, go to some afterlife, and in a couple of years get resurrected.
Typically, yeah, but what happens to Conan when he dies?
I
Think,
don't know. I never imagined him being very religious
okay,
at all.
let me give you. Well, he met God, but he didn't meet the Judeo-Christian God. He met his God,
Oh, who's that?
the name he keeps invoking in all those movies and comic books, Crom. He met Crom.
Oh, yeah.
Which you would think is one of those moments where it's like, oh, wow, okay, so we're finally going to figure out what happens when he meets this deity that he supposedly has been acting for all this time face to face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know what? Apparently the conversation did not go terribly well. Crom is not, I guess you could say Crom is not an empathetic character.
Kind of imagine he. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Apparently, Crom explained to Conan that the enemy he was fighting, something called Razazel, will mess up the entirety of the Sumerian world, and the other gods will put things right. But Crom himself is just not interested, and he turned away.
Yeah, I'm not interested in your war. Goodbye.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, I want to pose this question to you. If the deity you're following has basically turned his back on you, what would your reaction be?
Given the devotion Conan has, I think you fight him.
No, I'm asking what you would do.
I don't know. I don't really believe in religion or gods.
Okay. So, when Crom turned his back on Conan, he suddenly had to turn back towards him because he realized that Conan threw his sword in his back. Which just, it made Crom kind of incensed, so he reached down to grab Conan, who somehow, you know, manifested another sword and cut off Crom's fingers.
Huh.
So, as an opening move, I will say gutsy. I wouldn't call it bright. But Crom decided to punish Conan the only way he really thought would get through to the guy at that point. He sent him back to Sumeria.
Go home.
Yeah. You know, go solve this stuff by yourself. Come back when you're more of an adult.
I can also say he's been grounded.
Well, I mean, I guess since he's alive again, he's been ungrounded. This whole thing just sounds so weird to me that it's just like, this is the god I've been praying to all my life. Hey, come back here. I almost expect what's his name, Kratos, to come swinging in with an axe at any moment.
They'd be good buddies.
They would understand each other really well. Assuming one of them survived the meeting anyway.
Now we're talking young Kratos or old Kratos.
I'm not sure it really matters in this case.
I think it does.
I think either way you're fighting, the only difference is how often you hear, boy! Last up when it comes to Marvel comic news, we talked a little bit last week about the mysterious reveals of what Marvel was calling its most dysfunctional team of X-Men. And the best information we had was that it was an unknown team that was debuting in 2020, and two of its members were Havoc and the current Psylocke Quanon.
And these are more reserved characters.
Yeah, yeah. The rest of these characters have been introduced over time. What we found out is that a few of our guesses were correct. Nanny and the Orphan Maker are on this team. A couple of the internet's guesses were correct. Scalp Hunter and Mr. Sinister are on this team. The ones
Scalp
that,
Hunter.
yeah, Scalp Hunter is one of Sinister's marauders. And think of him like a forge who is tuned to death. That weird modular armor he's wearing, he can take pieces of it off to create weapons that can be used to kill things.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it's not terribly complicated. However, I'll be interested to know if the character takes on another name because my best understanding is that he is a Native American and his call sign is Scalp Hunter.
That wow.
Yeah, I'm really kind of surprised he hasn't come forward with another name yet. But the two silhouettes that everyone got wrong were the one with the flared gloves and the one in the upper right with the claws extended. The one with the claws is Wild Child.
Yeah, I had no idea who that was when I saw the picture. I
Oh,
was like, is that Sabretooth?
okay.
Looks like Sabretooth.
Wild Child has a long history in Marvel Comics, except I think a lot of people choose to forget it. He's Canadian, so he does have some similarities to Sabretooth and Wolverine. The thing
Is
is,
he from that story with the Wolverine's kid coming to try to kill him?
Wolverine's kid. You mean Daken?
No, no, there was like a like a whole flock of illegitimate children.
I don't know anything about that. Believe it or not, Wild Child started out on one of the training teams of Alpha Flight.
Oh,
Yeah. He actually made it to the Alpha Flight teams for a while, and he even led them. Yes, his powers make him somewhat feral, but there was a period where he went through a treatment that actually balanced out his mind, and he changed his costume and was known as I think Weapon Alpha for a significant amount of time. He led one of the Alpha Flight teams for a period.
hmm.
Then after Age of Apocalypse, he ended up taking on a form that was more recognizable from that thing. And then there was another period where he joined up with the Weapon X program. They augmented his powers, but it also made him kind of albino-ish. He looked like a Nosferatu. It was really bizarre. Sabretooth was also on the team, so he had this massive inferiority complex during this period. And then he died during the Romulus storyline in Wolverine. That was like one of the worst stories in Wolverine. I don't know how familiar you are with that.
Not very.
Okay, so Romulus was supposedly a character who is the progenitor of like just about every character who has a healing factor. If you trace it back their family tree, supposedly it leads back to Romulus. And then somehow Romulus
Oh,
reappeared
I've
later, and he was like killing every character with a healing factor so he could absorb it for some reason. I mean, if he's been living this long, I don't know why he suddenly needs it.
I've heard bits of this.
Yeah, he's the reason why characters like Wild Child and Feral died in the early aughts. They're all part of his lineage somehow. And I've noticed that since this storyline closed in Wolverine comics, the character Romulus, not only has he not been seen again, he's not been mentioned again. This was one of those storylines that comic book fans almost universally hated. Because it kind of took away what made a lot of these characters unique, even from each other. The character with the flared gloves, man, we were all way off. That is that is Empath from the Hellions. Empath.
I'm unfamiliar with that.
Okay, well, Empath, his powers are pretty much implied in his name. He has emotional control and manipulation. There are some cases where he might be closer to a telepath, because he actually is the reason that the fictional country of Nova Roma existed in Marvel Comics. Nova Roma was supposedly where Magma was from, right?
Okay.
That's where he was supposed to be from as well. That was retconned in the late 90s or early aughts so that Empath had manipulated an entire segment of a Mediterranean population into believing they were part of this fictional country. So that implies to me his powers are more telepathic than empathic. But he's also, I guess he's kind of hard to explain simply. He's one of those characters that could be a hero because he means well, except he has no ethics. He doesn't care, what he breaks to get to his goals. No, he's a character of high ethic. Yeah, high morals, low ethics. And this book is being called Hellions to launch in March of 2020. And now that we've gone over the entirety of it, the name combined with Empath, I'm starting to wonder if Empath is the one that put this team together.
Well, he is kind of in the middle of it. Well,
Well,
I say middle of it, but he's.
Well, he may be one of the few people that can unify these disparate characters into some kind of team with his abilities. Because if you take away Empath, or at least his powers, the only thing that all 8 of these characters have in common is that they are all unusually adept at murder. To a person. So, yeah, I'm starting to wonder if Empath is the reason they're all here. I'm still trying to figure out what Sinister is doing on this team. He is not a team guy.
I heard it sounds like he was one who set set the whole thing up.
Who, Sinister?
Yeah, and he's under watch by Havoc and Psylocke.
The thing is, though, Sinister is kind of the kickoff point for the Fallen Angel, so I don't know why he'd have to do this twice.
Hmm.
And Sinister has people working for him. He doesn't work with others. The fact that he's on this squad is already a big difference. Let alone, I don't think Sinister would work with people who are as unsubtle as Nanny and the Orphan Maker. That is not the way they go. Scalp Hunter? Yes. Wild Child? Possibly. But I mean, Havoc and Psylocke, they'd probably be the most uncontrollable people on this team to him. And then Orphan Maker, I don't know how you stop him. Not without knocking him out, anyway. I just have a whole bunch of questions based on this image. Next up, we have DC Comic News. We're going to talk about the other major company in comics and what storylines and characters they have coming now and in the near future. It appears that Superman's reveal of his secret identity next week may come with some unintended consequences. We've been talking about it on and off that this December, in Superman 18, he's going to reveal his secret identity to the world. He's going to tell everyone that he has been Clark Kent. Well, in Superman 19, that's due out this January, one of the, it appears, alternative cover images shows a destroyed Daily Planet.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I'm starting to question this image only because DC is notorious not just for variant covers, but for variants that don't entirely tell the story within the comic.
Or have nothing to do with the comic.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if this is just an attention getter to get people to pick it up. I mean, I'm more curious to read Superman 18, where he reveals his identity. That, to me, is going to be a ground-shaking issue.
At least you hope it would be.
I can't see how it wouldn't be. It's the first time he's tried this. I know Marvel characters seem to be going through this period where just about everybody is unmasking, but DC still has a lot of secrecy revolving around its characters. And Superman is, to my knowledge, has never revealed his secret identity to the world, just to select individuals.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal to me. And it is kind of a seismic shift. I mean, they say that the character of Clark Kent is not going away. He'll still do that. But at the same time, if you reveal your secret identity to the world, the characters... I guess your ability to walk around certainly isn't gone, but your ability to be a normal person very likely is.
And what about the people that around him?
I don't know, and I still have large questions as to what this does to his wife, who's written so many stories about him over the years, both before and after she married him, about his exploits as Superman. Wouldn't that call, like, her entire reporting career into question? I mean, if she hasn't been telling people about the entirety of Superman's exploits after their marriage, that seems like a horrible abuse of the public trust. But at the same time, then you think about the period before she got married to him, then you start to question, wait, you've been this close to him for how long before you figured out who he was? I mean, wouldn't people start to question her investigative intelligence?
I'm more worried about what's going to happen with his family. Are they still alive? Like Ma and Pa Kent?
I haven't seen them in the comics in quite a while, so I want to say no. This could lead to reverberations down the line. I mean, the Daily Planet itself would be a target because he's heavily associated with it in both lives. His cousin, Supergirl, I mean, I don't know if she has a secret identity, but either way, she would get no peace from this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would have to... This could lead to bad things for Batman now that I think about it, because you'd have to study Clark Kent's personal relationships, and he's spent quite a bit of time with Bruce Wayne.
That had some interesting ripple effects.
It could.
Or... yeah. Or what would Lex Luthor do with that?
Well, Luthor's known who both Superman and Batman are for quite a while, from what I can tell from the comics I've read.
Okay.
He just, for some reason, he hadn't done anything with that information. He revealed this around the time that he joined the Justice League, that short period.
Mm-hmm.
That I want to say it was like 18 months. So, I'm not a Superman fan, but this just feels like there's going to be a lot coming out of this. At least there ought to be. If there isn't, I'll be a little disappointed. Um, Also, for Wonder Woman 750, a piece of fan art by an industry heavyweight is turning into a variant cover.
What?
Well, do you remember not too long ago there was a lot of hullabaloo because both Action Comics and Detective Comics reached 1,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was all this big stuff, all these variant covers, all these huge comic books coming out for these 1,000s. Not long after this, Nicola Scott came out with a piece of fan art about Wonder Woman, and he said it'd be great if one day there would be a 1,000th issue of Sensational Comics. Now, to answer your first question, no, there's no such thing as Sensational Comics. I haven't been able to find any record of it so far. Maybe you can if you take a look. But the idea was Sensational Comics would be the same kind of anthology book Action Comics has been for Superman and Detective Comics has been for Batman, but in this case it would be for Wonder Woman, who's probably one of the more underserved starring figures that DC Comics has today, I would say. Oh. And this is an interesting piece of fan art that pretty much details Wonder Woman's various looks from her inception through to the current era. It's a nice piece of art. Apparently, though, Wonder Woman is reaching her 750th issue upcoming soon, and DC Comics like this piece of fan art so much they're turning it into a variant for Wonder Woman 750. Yeah, it's number 750 is going to be a 96-page prestige format comic. Scott is the latest in a lineup of names contributing covers to this that includes Jim Lee, Stanley, Archer Lau, and George Perez. I think it's kind of cool that somebody paid attention enough, at least, to go back and pull this image to make it a variant. And I do like the art.
So, found Sensation Comics.
Did it exist?
There's a Sensation, not Sensational.
Oh, okay. He listed this as Sensational.
And this one says Sensation, but it ran 109 issues from 1942 to 1952.
Okay.
And it's...
I'm sorry. This was for Sensation Comics, as you put it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Wonder Woman... Black... Oh, wow. I'm not liking a lot of character names in here.
Okay. I won't ask, then.
Yeah.
Still, though, it does seem like... It is kind of odd that there's this holy trinity in DC, and Superman has I don't know how many series. Batman has more series that I'm comfortable with. How many does Wonder Woman have? 1. It does seem like somebody's being massively underserved. I think even Harley Quinn has like 2 or 3 books at this point. Last up when it comes to DC comic news, we have to talk a little bit about Damian Wayne.
Oh boy.
The character was introduced by Christopher Priest, who's now going by Priest. And he had a very, very different idea as to what he was going to do with his character originally.
Oh?
He told Newsarama, quote, "The world's worst dad is about a man who loves and desperately wants to be loved but is capable of neither. So he does skanky stuff like put out a hit on his daughter so he can spend time with her. And in the latter part of the series, Deathstroke clearly falls in love with Damian Wayne. I hope fans can understand that. I hope they got that. Deathstroke loves that kid and can access that love in ways he cannot with his own children because Damian is so very much like him," unquote. Which is kind of creepy, right?
A little bit.
Okay. So, Priest went on to say, quote, "Our custody battle between Batman and Deathstroke was literally undecided until the last days before the book went to press," unquote. For those that are unaware, early on in Damian Wayne's history, there was a little bit of a mystery as to who his father really was. I mean, he just kind of showed up and declared Bruce Wayne his dad, and Wayne had to backtrack and find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
During this period, though, Slade Wilson showed up and claimed Damian as his son. And because, again, Batman wasn't there for Damian's, birth or raising, he really wasn't sure what to make of any of this. Neither was Damian, for that matter. He wasn't sure if the fact that his mother kept telling him that Batman was his father was another lie or attempt to manipulate him. So according to Priest, quote, "I know the decision wasn't an easy one, but there was a real opportunity for major exploitation of all 3 characters, Batman, Deathstroke, Robin. They had the bosses made another choice. In my head, at least, Damian is definitely Slade kids, and Wayne is just lying to himself," unquote. So Priest's original intention was for Damian Wayne to be Slade's biological son. As
Huh.
mu- Now, I kind of like the concept that this kid so thoroughly rejected his father and became a Robin anyway. However, there's also the idea that Slade Wilson has already had so many kids that have rebelled against him, it would just kind of be par for the course.
Yeah.
When you think about like Jericho and the two Ravagers, and I think there's even another character in there somewhere. He's had very bad luck with kids. So it actually, in retrospect, I'd say that as interesting as it would be for Damian Wilson to be a Robin, Damian Wayne is actually the more unique type of character.
Well, I think it does a little something. It, as much as I hate the character, I feel it does a lot of good for the Batman character, and definitely puts it in a different situation from every other Robin.
Yeah, and it also gives Batman something he doesn't get a lot, and that's self-reflection. I mean, Damian is probably more into Bruce Wayne's mission than Bruce is, really. The kid is
And
living the life.
and I'm pretty sure he's observing this and wondering if how off-putting it looks.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a point where you look at this kid and go, wow, is that what I am? For all I know, that may be some of the impetus that Tom King has added for Bruce Wayne's marriage and everything. So, no, I think even though the idea of Damian being Deathstroke's son is interesting, I think the DC editorial made the right decision here.
They tried something new.
Mm-hmm.
What a novel idea.
Okay, easy. Last up, we have our general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. And we do have a little bit of news in regards to TFCon, the big Transformers con I think it happens twice a year in the United States. The latest one has been announced for March 20th through 22nd in the Doubletree by Hilton Hotel at the entrance to Universal Orlando in Florida. Tickets just went on sale, and I know you're asking, if this is a comic book show, what are you talking about Transformers for? Well, TFCon often has a lot of guests that have to do with the current and prior, actually, Transformers comics. The last one in Burbank actually had Margaret Scott there, and she had written a serious amount as well as helped create Windblade for IDW. So they usually have some really notable people as well as some great individuals to talk to if you're interested in the culture of either the toys or the comic books. So I would recommend it. They already have Greg Berger listed as a special guest, and he was the original voices for Skyfire, Long Haul, Outback, and Grimlock. And if it was in my area, I'd go.
I wish we went last time they were in California.
So did I. You know what? I'm actually mad I didn't go because I had gotten those written questions from Margaret Scott.
Uh-huh.
And her publicist was actually nice enough and said that Margaret was wondering if you were going to be around at TFCon. And I'm just like, I didn't apply in time. I could have had a press pass, but I didn't think that anyone there would want to see me. And it turns out I made an impression.
You didn't do that a lot.
I guess maybe being a fanboy helps in certain respects. I can tell you that there is a couple creators who are having serious problems with each other, and sadly enough, they're brothers.
Really?
Yeah, the Luna brothers. There's two of them, Jonathan and Joshua, and they're both independent creators at the current. They're actually they're getting a lot of critical praise for a new series that just came out, I think, last week, 20XX. The first issue came out, was co-created with Lauren Keeley.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, Joshua has publicly accused his brother, Jonathan, of decades of manipulation and abuse.
Whoa.
He put out a lengthy Twitter thread, and Joshua claimed that his brother unfairly negotiated contracts for joint projects between the two that benefited himself more than the two of them equally. He's also accusing Jonathan of attempting to trap him within a shared condo to force him to continue living together and discouraging Joshua from establishing his own independent career and his own contracts. He's also saying that Jonathan physically accosted him a few times at home and at comic book conventions. Now, Jonathan has come back and said that, quote, I am not a perfect person, but sadly my brother Joshua has made some very offensive comments about me, twisting our history to serve himself. That said, I love my brother very much. I tried many times to work things out with him. I really hope one day we'll be friends again. Unquote. That's really kind of bothering me because the way that Jonathan has responded, none of that sounds like a denial. It sounds more like attempting to paint things in a different light. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I'm always very curious when people have bad things said about them and they don't deny it. All they do is just kind of twist the meaning a little bit. You know, like he says here, quote, twisting our history to serve himself. You didn't say that you didn't do any of the things that he's claiming. That's a very specific answer, and that bothers me. I can't say for sure who did and did not do anything since all of this is brand new as of literally today. I don't know. This whole thing is really weird, and it feels like something has happened. I just can't say which one of them is actually correct with their perceptions.
Yeah.
So I expect that to develop. Maybe not as vilely as the whole Vic Mignogna thing. You know, that's taken on a life of its own with fans. And last up in general comics news, dude, I have an interesting piece of sales news, and I did not expect this at all. And I want you to help me here because I'm having serious trouble sussing this one out.
Okay.
All right, so we have the sales numbers for November 2019. Not all of them, but a general overview.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, November is like the first full month where we're dealing with the current status of Marvel Comics. And I don't think it's too hard to figure out that one of Marvel's X-Men books ended up at the top of the sales charts.
Yeah.
Given everything going on, that's kind of just obvious, right?
Yes.
Which X-Men book do you think hit number one?
What was the last one? The Dawn of X thing?
That was Fallen Angels was the last... No. Yeah, Fallen Angels and X-Force were the last two to come out.
Oh, no, I'm talking about during the whole miniseries before they...
What, you mean House of X and Powers of 10?
Yeah, between those two.
No, I mean, November, those two books were already over, and it was a bunch of new number ones that came out.
Oh.
It was one of those from the new Dawn of X era that became number one. The question is, which one?
I'm going to give you a biased answer to say Marauders?
I like the guess. I really do. Can you believe that Marauders did not even hit the top 5?
I'm not too surprised.
Okay, so I'm going to lay it out there because when you think about X-Men books, it's very easy to think about the flagships, right? The X-Men, the X-Force, Excalibur, all known names.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, the number one selling book for all of November 2019 is The New Mutants number 1.
Really?
I'm just as astonished. I mean, the only thing I thought less likely would be Fallen Angels to hit number 1. I did not expect New Mutants to be the top-selling book of the month.
I wasn't too enthused with that one.
Wasn't my favorite either. I'm not saying it was bad. I was still feeling out the story. Hickman and Leinil Francis Yu's X-Men number 2 actually landed at the second spot for the month. Absolute Carnage number 5 hit third. X-Force number 1 hit fourth. Fallen Angels number 1 hit 5. Marauders and Excalibur, probably my two favorite debuts from the month, didn't even hit in the top 5. I'm thrown, honestly. No, I mean, I don't know what that says. I don't know if comic book stores just happen to order that many more of those particular books, or if fans just didn't care for the ones that I enjoyed. I don't know what happened, but power to them, man. I really didn't see New Mutants number 1 coming out on top. I'm more astonished that Marvel took the entirety of the top 5. Usually there's a Batman book somewhere in there. Hey, say what you will about Batman, but he's a steady seller. And I really need to see the sales numbers on the month now. I really want to know which books came out in the top 10 and where DC landed in there. They have to have at least one book in the top 10. So I will take a look later on, and I'll see if I can find those numbers for next week. The subject of this week is Batman White Knight, the very first comics that were put out by Sean Murphy in his alternative tale of Batman. And we decided to bring this up because last week, White Knight turned into the focus of a lot of conversation, especially since there's a new story. They've already confirmed that a third volume of what's now being called the Murphyverse will be coming. And it does seem like this book asks a lot of very existential questions about Batman and what he means to a lot of different people. The book is both written and drawn by Sean Murphy. The colors are by Matt Hollingsworth, the letters are by Todd Klein, and it was edited by Maggie Howell. Oh, it was edited by Maggie Howell and Mark Doyle. This is an interesting tale about the Joker determining that he's going to show the world that it doesn't need Batman by taking medications to balance out his psyche and then fix Gotham himself. Which, it's one of those things that where when you read the concept, you think, huh, that's an interesting take. When you say it out loud, that actually sounds like the most evil thing in the world you could do to Bruce Wayne. Well, it does just kind of remove his entire reason for being since his parents were shot. That almost makes his life useless at that moment, doesn't it?
My thoughts on this were on those bullet points when I read this.
Which bullet
To be
points?
honest, the bullet points you're working on.
What the
So,
overall? Because is that because you already knew the overall concept before reading it, or is it just because of the questions we were asking each other?
That has nothing to do with that. This is what my feelings were at the moment as I was reading it.
Oh, okay.
So I'm on a totally different page of thoughts and questions.
Okay. Well, what were your questions in regards to this kind of series?
Actually, not much of questions. Was more just kind of picking at it from a person that likes to write alternate stories and rework a history to fit something else.
Okay, then I guess we can start by asking what were your general observations about this series and its take on Gotham? And when I say Gotham, I mean the Batman, the villains, the way people live, everything.
Well, through my particular observation was just like again. I'm working from the angle of how I sometimes write stories.
Hey,
And,
you're a reader just like I'm a reader. I'm curious to know.
yeah, like I said, I things I've been noticing is it seems to be picking and pulling from different parts of Batman from various different medias.
Mhm.
Some of them I don't agree with, but the overall story is really good. I have to say.
I think it's good because I do appreciate the story a lot. I mean, I've made no bones from the prior episode. I own this hardcover, not hardcover. I own the trade paperback, and I think this is transformative because, unlike a lot of DC comics, this takes a hard look at what Batman is and what he does, and whether or not it's really effective for what he's intending to do. And the problematic answer is that when you really look at the effect Batman's had on Gotham, his effect really isn't on the villains of the city. And I'm not saying that he emboldened villains or he created more extreme villains because they were answering his activities. What I mean is he's been at this mission for I don't know how long, and unfortunately crime in Gotham, if anything, it may have gotten weirder during his period, but it doesn't really seem to be getting any worse or any better. And at the same time, you also have to ask about his effect on those villains because his methods they don't deal with the causation problems that any villains have, whether it be monetary or psychological. And his solutions also don't really offer any sort of long-term goal for what to do with any of these people. I wish I could say that in a way that doesn't sound like snippy or just plain condescending, but that is a serious problem. What is his end goal? I know he wants to stop crime, but the way he's doing it, he's just kind of creating a recycling bin where these people pop back out after a few months with new ideas.
God damn, you take such big concepts that my mind has never gone. My mind's never gone in any of those directions that you keep boasting on about. But
I'm not boasting. I'm really trying to break down what he's doing versus what effect it has. I mean, the best thing he's done to help Gotham, I guess, would be to train the younger generation. As much as they have not fared as well as he has typically,
hmm
at least they have more optimism about the world. It's not just about punishing villains, they're actually trying to create a finer world overall. The only problem is their mentor really doesn't have a roadmap on where to achieve a finer world, in my opinion. He just knows more or less how to, at best, protect the status quo. But the first issue here, when it started with the Batmobile pulling up to Arkham Asylum, and someone getting out to go visit one of the inmates, and then when you finally look in the cell, there's the Batman chained to the wall and a smiling Jack Napier standing over him. You already know there's some serious problems here.
hmm
But from there, it goes to a 1 year ago flashback of the Batman in his Batmobile chasing the Joker on a hoverboard. One of those ridiculous little two-wheeled hoverboards that's souped up enough to jump over a suspension bridge. And it looks like it's starting out like your typical Batman story, really. The Batman chasing Joker who's doing I don't know what,
hmm
with some damn near Super Friends style technology he's playing around with. And but it doesn't take long for you to realize that there's something a little bit off here, because while the Joker is bounding over rooftops on this hoverboard, Batman is doing the same thing in a souped up Batmobile, creating a lot of damage in his wake. And I mean a serious amount of damage.
and and yeah, this kind of reminds me of what they did in the old Batman Begins movie.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of that, except this Batman is a bit more devil may care. I mean, Barbara Gordon's sitting in the passenger seat yelling about him, about trying to make him control his own impulses. Because I did notice that on the 8th page of issue 1 there, the Joker, yeah, he's laughing, he's zooming in and out, but he's bouncing around all these problems while Batman is practically slamming through them in his car.
And this is one of the things I kind of disagree with the idea of Batman, but my perception might be colored by the animated series Batman versus what's happened now.
Well, explain, I'm a little bit confused.
I just don't feel Batman would go through this level of extreme and collateral damage.
I don't know, and that's the problem, is that based on the animated series, yeah, probably not. But the Batman in the Murphyverse, minus some aesthetic differences, is a lot like the one in DC canon.
This one reminds me of the Batman from Frank Miller's Dark Knight, to be honest.
Well, that's what I mean, though. This is more like the Batman we all know. He's just maybe slightly more driven to catch the Joker than the usual story we read. But he's got a lot of the same support structure. He's got a Nightwing, he's got a Batgirl, Alfred's still there, the mansion's still there, he still has his personal security and secrecy. He's just really driven to catch the Joker, and looking at the dialogue that Murphy's put together here, the dialogue is great because it sounds like just about every other modern Batman tale you've read. You wouldn't know that a whole lot is really different here. And things don't really start to get scary until the Joker, Batman beats him in a near submission, and the Joker holds up some pills saying that he can get better. And the Batman takes the bottle out of his hand and just dumps the contents down the Joker's throat, then puts his hand over his mouth.
Yeah, up until that point where he's beating the hell out of Joker and doing all that bit, I kind of disagree with the myths, but it's here where I feel like it's kind of more aligned because of how much the Joker has impacted Batman.
Yeah. And that appears to be present in this world as well. They're both very personal enemies of each other. And I guess you could say in regular DC canon, depending on what kind of nerve the Joker is struck, I would believe Batman could be this vindictive.
Yes.
It's happened before. Not consistently, but it's happened often enough where I do think that they're very capable of this type of personal damage to each other. But somebody surreptitiously took a cell phone video of Batman's actions against the Joker, as well as the fact that even though he was doing this and nearly killing someone who obviously needs psychological help, serious psychological help, No one, not Batman, Nightwing, Renee Montoya, Detective Bullock, or Commissioner Gordon, who are all in the room, really did anything to stop him. Which makes the whole thing like just multiple times worse than it could possibly be. And because that video made it out, there was suddenly a movement of people who thought that Batman went too far, and there was something of empathy for the Joker at this moment, which, given the status of American society today, I could believe that.
Yeah.
People get weird about causes sometimes. And then there was that view of Napier waking up several weeks later in his cell in Arkham Asylum, which has all this Batman stuff, including a poster to the animated series you were talking about sitting behind him.
Yeah, I know he has a looks. I'm not sure if it's a poster or some mannequin hanging from the ceiling, but it's a picture of Jack Nicholson's Joker from the original.
Yeah,
Batman,
aiming that
long
ridiculous
barrel.
long revolver, and he knows the toy from the Tim Burton Batman across from it.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these different homages to different eras of different medias of Batman, even. I mean, you can see things that look like the 1966 utility belt, the Frank Miller version of it, several different takes on the animated, Batmobiles from like 6 different eras.
Lego Batman.
Yep. Even the old like Play School and Playmobil Batman stuff in the playset down there by the bunk. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's a terrific image because not only does it encapsulate how much impact Batman has had in media, but it also talks about how much potential time has really flowed in this universe and how long the Batman and Joker have been in this weird, almost eternal struggle they're in. And of course, Nightwing and Batgirl in normal clothes are questioning Bruce about what he's doing and why he's still chasing the Joker when apparently there is no Joker right now. But we also find out that Alfred is possibly terminally ill, and Bruce has been using adapted Mr. Freeze technology to try to keep him alive.
Which is a kind of a pull from one of the Schumacher movies.
Right. So, and we go through a couple of the... it seems like Napier's largely talking to himself, but he's not. He knows that Batman is outside his cell window listening to him. Napier knows he's talking directly to someone. And it does seem like he's finally able to start to move on somehow. But the brilliant move is the next one, because Napier is a sharp enough mind who has dealt enough in Gotham that he is actually studying legal courses to work on his own defense. And because of his previous mental illnesses, combined with the fact that the medication has evened his mind, combined again with the reading and the history he knows of Gotham, he manages to get himself released.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes this man, I don't want to say devious, but extremely clever. As well as studious.
Really like that full-page panel right there at the very end, though.
What, where he says he's going to be the White Knight?
Yep.
It is an interesting juxtaposition, and it's a nice bit of dialogue because you're standing there, or I would imagine just about anybody who read this as it's going on would sit here and question, is he sincere? Does he actually want to save the city? Is this a con? Does White Knight means he's suddenly going to put on makeup and just be as crazy as he ever was again?
I didn't get that because the art speaks a lot, too.
The art speaks, but I mean, this is a character who deception is like a second form of communication.
Yes, but you usually tell in the way he's drawn, and especially in the eyes. The eyes in here they seem very determined, not devious.
Yeah, I will admit, when I first read the first issue, I thought it was interesting, but it didn't really pull me in. Now, the second issue yanked me deep into the story. Because Napier was released, he didn't know what to do, so the first thing he did was went to one of his last Joker safe houses. He's probably trying to figure out where he's going to go. But before he even opens the door, it pops open, and there's someone dressed like the modern Harley Quinn behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And, she says he looks like a freak. The first thing she does is go at his face, and she's trying to put lipstick on him so he looks like something she recognizes more.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's kind of bizarre because he pops up with a ring real quickly, and I couldn't tell if he was trying to be nice or if he was actually considering marriage. But after a couple horrified glances from this woman, she starts laughing at him. He just can't be serious. And she wants him to stop with the medication because now she thinks of Napier as holding her Joker. She's definitely in a bad place mentally.
In hindsight, thinking back on this, I kind of think that this is a representation of how people are just misportray Harley Quinn.
A little bit, and I think this is also Murphy's kind of quiet jab about what he prefers out of the character.
Yeah, I definitely feel that.
Because when this woman is getting ready to really attack Napier, and she's denying him his medication so he can try and even out his troubled mind at the moment, she's suddenly kicked in the face, and then another woman, standing in full, like, classic Harley Quinn black and red, now wearing the ring this woman dropped on the floor, shows up. And this, evidently, is Harleen Quinzel herself.
Mm-hmm.
And this new woman, they don't really delve into in the second issue here, but they make it pretty clear that this is Harley Quinn, and whoever the Joker's been hanging out with for the last few years is not.
I really love this. I really do.
Yeah. And I mean, even the hyenas who have been living in this place, she just kind of... Or, no, she even brought hyenas with her, which further cements the idea that this is the original.
Yeah.
So we bounce out of that adventure into Mr. Freeze, who is staring at his wife in the canister, the image we're used to seeing of this character in Batman canon these days.
Mm-hmm.
Except he's not alone anymore. In his workhouse is also Bruce Wayne and Barbara Gordon. And he is actually experimenting both to try to fix his wife as well as Alfred at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And he suddenly uses his experimental cure on himself, which actually undoes all the metabolic changes he's gone through over the years. His body temperature evens out, he can breathe normal air, but the unfortunate side effect is it forcibly ages you.
Yes, which was interesting that we're not given the context until later, but he is much older.
Yes, he is. I can actually confirm that because during the second volume they put out a special called I think it was just... God, I have it somewhere here. It's a one-shot about Victor Fries and his father. His father was like a Nazi scientist along with a Jewish man.
Mm-hmm.
And Victor Fries was a child during the early stages of World War II. So that gives you an idea as to how old he really is.
Yeah.
But the problem with this process is, while it would work to rescue Nora, it wouldn't rescue Alfred because Alfred is already of advanced age. If he takes his cure, it would pretty much age him to death.
Like he did the mice.
Right. So we flash back to Jack Napier, who's been taken to Harley Quinn's apartment, which is a relatively normal flat in a brick building somewhere.
It kind of reminds me of the flat that the Joker was in the Killing Joke story.
It actually kind of reminds me of the flat that Daredevil had in the Netflix series. But Quinn is... She's not a supervillain, she's just been trying her best to live life, and then she flashes back and explains why she disappeared. And that was because the Joker was so obsessed with Batman, she was convinced that the Joker loved Batman more than the Joker loved Harley Quinn. That image of Batman at that pseudo-shrine at the desk and Quinn just sitting in lingerie on the bed, looking despondent?
Yeah.
That was truly sad. And then there was a period where the Joker actually kidnapped one of the Robins. I'm going to assume that's Jason Todd.
Yes, they specifically call him Jason.
Okay. And he's threatening the kid with a razor, and that's when Quinn walked in with a razor, basically said, "It's this or me," and... he really didn't have an answer, so instead, Quinn ran to the bat signal, got Batman, and brought Batman back to the Joker's hideout, where he beat the Joker into submission, but Todd had disappeared.
Yeah.
And there is still no answer as to where Jason Todd is after this adventure. This is pretty much the Murphy versus version of Death in the Family, except it's much more ambiguous. Because we don't know if he's gone or if he's dead.
It also alters its placement in the timeline as well.
Well,
later on,
it also kind of alters the story of Harley Quinn, because in the DC canon, she leans into the wacky because it works. That's how she interfaces with life.
Mm-hmm.
In the Murphyverse, she's a woman who fell in love with the wrong kind of man, but still had enough moral and ethics to know when to stop. She called in Bruce Wayne knowing that it would cause the person she cared about a lot of pain, but she had hit her hard red line. And that's a really different take on this character.
Again, I like it.
It's really fascinating. As well as Quinzel agreeing to be Napier's girlfriend again, as well as assist him in his bid to make Gotham a better place. The whole thing is just, it's a really weird juxtaposition on where we usually sit.
Mm-hmm.
But we also find out late in this issue, during a highfalutin party that Bruce Wayne is attending, that the rich people in Gotham like the Batman quite a bit because A, he rarely ever goes into their neighborhoods. B, he ends up creating a lot of destruction, and C, those destroyed properties are suddenly sold very cheap for either renovations or rebuilding.
Yeah, and that tripped a nerve there.
It did, but it's one of those things where I think Murphy pointed out something obvious about Batman that nobody had ever really thought about in any version of DC Comics, in that because supervillains tend to hide in places where it's harder for them to be monitored by police. So obviously run down, less patrolled areas of Gotham, i.e. poorer, more crime-ridden.
Yeah.
And then when Batman does what he does, there's invariably a lot of collateral damage. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who live in those communities can't afford to pick up the real estate and start over. Someone else does. It's just one of those cases where I think Murphy managed to point out something so obvious that a lot of us missed it.
And and the thing is, as I said, it stuck a nerve with Bruce Wayne, which he acted out violent on, not because he didn't like the guy. It's obvious. It's how true it is.
Yeah, it is an uncomfortable truth. It's another case that Bruce Wayne's mission is really causing more damage than it's solving. But then the end of the second issue created another question as to what Napier's motives are, because Napier called a meeting between a lot of the most notable villains in all of Gotham.
Even some more obscure ones, too.
He and Quinzel were sitting at the same table as Poison Ivy, Bane, Two-Face, the Scarecrow, the Penguin, the Riddler, Killer Croc, the young girl. That was Croc's friend. I forgot her name. And
Dolly something.
Yeah, and
Scarface.
Scarface and the ventriloquist. Yeah.
And there's that Rocket Girl over in the back.
Oh, Roxy Rocket.
Yeah.
So, and all of a sudden in the middle of this meeting, Napier or Harley Quinzel produces the Mad Hatter's hat for Napier, and he puts it on. And that's when you find out that he's come up with a downright Machiavellian plan, really.
It is. I can't find the words to describe what he did.
It's not entirely biologically possible, but as far as comic books go, it's way up there.
It's good comic logic, and it's one of the few things I don't question. It's fascinating and terrifying.
Right. So he uses the Mad Hatter's hat, which controls these cards that the Hatter usually puts behind someone's ear to control their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And Napier had jabbed several of these cards into Clayface, like deep into his brain. Yeah. Then, using Clayface under his control, forced him to basically break down to silt, poured that silt into the drinks that he had at this meeting of supervillains. So that means all these villains who've been drinking all this time have small bits of this mind control Clayface that Napier can now control by proxy.
Yes, and the logic behind this was one of those mind control things can't control an army.
Right. So because of this point of contact from Clayface, who's now ingested into all these villains and their subsequent thugs, Napier is now in de facto control of basically 90% of the crime in Gotham.
Well, at least the super criminals, as they call it.
But still, though, I mean, this is a serious thing, because this is one of those moments where, again, you have to question, okay, did the Joker just con all of us?
The thing is, I never, that question never came up to me, because I realized that he's taken extreme measures, much like how Batman took extreme measures.
Yeah, but as we've been discussing, is that right? There really is no good answer here.
It is not right. Period. Hands down, no.
I mean, it's really just a case of, is this for better, for worse, or is this for Joker? Really don't know. So we get into issue 3. In the very beginning, we're back at the woman who we was dressed like modern Harley Quinn.
Hmm.
She's still at the Joker's old hideout, except now she's gotten dressed up in a completely new outfit.
Hmm.
And I gotta admit, when I first saw it, I thought, okay, this is a bit punk. But it's one of those outfits that the more I see it, the more it grows on me.
Yeah, it's just a weird. It's a weird combination of a
It,
lot of things.
it's pretty much, I guess you could say, it is Harley Quinn on a Joker base. It's a largely black bodysuit. She's wearing a purple corset that has like the Harley Quinn diamonds on it.
Hmm.
It's basically, yeah, Harley Quinn on a Joker pattern. And she's even cut her hair and colored it to puce. Meanwhile, the mind-controlled villains are running amok downtown, and it's still kind of unclear what Napier's planning to do at this moment. But Batman, Nightwing, and Batgirl are interceding, and as you would expect at this moment, there is a lot going on and more than a bit collateral damage happening. The
Hmm.
police don't seem to feel like they should get involved at this moment, but they are monitoring from a distance. Meanwhile, the Bane and Killer Croc are destroying a building. I think it was something Napier was into.
It looks like a bank.
It was a library.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, no.
it was the library Napier was building.
Yeah, yeah, he was building with the money he was awarded.
Yeah, which I mean the obvious answer to Batman is that okay, so obviously the Joker's trying to get an insurance payout, which even on its face doesn't make a lot of sense because the building's not complete. How are you going to get anything?
No, no, it wasn't an insurance pay. He figures he's building there for a reason, and he's gonna see what that reason is by bringing the fight to it because Joker's not gonna want this destroyed.
Hmm. At the same time,
Unfortunately,
that wasn't even the Joker's plan. I mean, he
no.
had the villains run amok to distract Batman long enough where he could sneak into an old law office to find records on whoever's been rebuilding Gotham after the Batman destroys sections of it. Which in itself is morally dubious, but a brilliant move.
Hmm.
As well as seemingly Joker inspired. It does seem like something he would readily do. So what Napier's discovered is that there is something called the Batman Reconstruction Fund.
Hmm.
Or, no, the Batman Devastation Fund. It is like $3 billion per year that is brought in by Wayne Enterprises to rebuild the buildings destroying the Batman's wake. But unfortunately, instead of just awarding those buildings back to the original owners of the property, the buildings are put up for sale. And of course, the rich
Wait,
people. Sorry?
wait. I thought this was pulled out of a disaster relief fund, not Wayne Enterprises.
It is, but the Disaster Relief Fund is funded by Wayne Enterprises.
Really, I didn't read that part.
Yeah. Isn't that sad, though? I mean, Batman's causing all this devastation, Wayne is paying for it, and really the biggest losers in all of it, because the people who create this destruction are typically put into a mental hospital, is that the poor people of Gotham are the ones who pay the biggest price. That's awful. So, fast forward a bit more, and Bruce Wayne is
No, no. I actually need to backtrack because it wasn't Batman putting funding it. It was taxpayers paying for that.
It's supposedly taxpayers. Maybe I've actually uncovered something from the second half, but it is paid for by Wayne Enterprises.
All right.
That's always been one of the weirdest things to me is about how that works. And I don't mean weird in a bad way. It's just one of those cases where I know he's trying to do right, but he still isn't doing it right. You can't just throw money at a problem. So we flash back to Bruce, who's been trying to recover after a hard day fighting multiple supervillains. He woke up in Alfred's hospital bed because unfortunately Alfred hooked him up to the machines that were keeping him alive and regenerating him. So he saved Bruce Wayne's life at the cost of his own, and he knew it. And this wasn't as scary to me then as it is now, only because we've read so many of these dark multiverse tales where Alfred's death usually means things are about to go off the rails for Batman.
Mm-hmm.
But, the person I felt the worst for over the next few pages was Barbara Gordon. Because it's not implicitly said, but it's heavily implied through this volume that Barbara is the peacemaker in the Bat family. She's the one that seems to work the hardest holding them all together.
Mm-hmm.
And at this moment, obviously things are just not working well in general with Alfred dead, Bruce not despondent but just withdrawn, and Dick pretending everything is okay. But we bounce again further forward into issue 3, where Napier and Quinzel are just walking through the street, and then they get accosted by 3 thugs.
Yeah.
I almost had to laugh when they demanded, the purse and the wallet. Quinzel hands the purse over to Napier and just says, "Hold." And she took care of the 3 of them fast.
Yeah. Because she can still do that.
Oh, yeah. But then they're met up by a man with a gun who pretty much pushes all the thugs out. And this is the Murphyverse version of Duke Thomas, who is a former in this universe, he's former special forces, and he runs local youth groups, so he's pretty much the one watching Backport, the rundown section of Gotham. And I wouldn't say he's protecting the area, he's just doing his best to make sure that people don't mess with each other on the streets. Law enforcement's not his thing, just as much peace as possible. That's all he wants.
He tried it, though.
Yeah. It's also interesting to look at this big, hulking version of Duke Thomas and think that in DC canon, that's the Signal.
Huh.
Right? But he and Napier get along rather well because Napier is actually intending to make more of a base down in Backport to draw a bigger eye as to what's going on down there. Meanwhile, sorry?
I'm saying, yeah, he is, but he's still keeps him at arm's length because it's still the Joker.
Yes. Yeah, Thomas is not stupid. He doesn't implicitly trust the man, but he's willing to try anything to help Backport.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, Thomas is running a pretty impressive community center, complete with law enforcement liaisons and community watches, weight training, and activity centers for young people. A few offices. It's actually a pretty good setup. Flash forward again, and the former modern Harley Quinn, now the Neo Joker, has busted into one of the Napier's current hideouts, and she finds the mind-controlled Mad Hatter as well as the comatose, Clayface standing there with his tongue lolling out. That's a hell of an image. But I like that when she pokes Clayface, he just suddenly breaks down into sand, and all that's left is his brain and a pair of eyes connected to a tongue with a card still jammed in it. That's very RoboCop 2.
It is, and he's still alive.
I know.
That's a weird thing.
There is that question as to how conscious is he at this moment. I feel bad for the guy. I've never felt bad for Clayface before. But they move into another room while she's convinced the Mad Hatter to just keep control of whatever's going on. And in the next room is where Napier has housed all the supervillains under his control, which are now under the control of the Mad Hatter and the Neo Joker. Not good news.
No.
So now we're into issue 4, and Napier has kicked off an official city councilman campaign, and using Duke Thomas as his liaison in Backport, he's got a pretty fast following. So it looks like things are going well as far as his personal plans. But there was something rather wicked about the police, namely Harvey Bullock, confronting both Napier and Duke Thomas in Backport. And while the two of them are getting into a shouting match, this is when Batman swings in, doesn't touch Bullock, who incited this whole thing, but instead immediately lays into Thomas and Napier. It's like he can't even see past his own instincts at this point.
He's under the impression Joker needs to be taken on, and anyone who's working with him is...
Yeah, but he's not even questioning which one is doing right and which one is doing wrong. Yeah, Batman's not even actually asking which one is provoking the situation. He just immediately swings on the people he sees as bad. But it's also interesting to see a mob of people coming at Batman because they don't want him beating up on Napier, and Napier's the one keeping them back. Meanwhile, Napier gets in the car with Commissioner Gordon because he wants to have an immediate talk with him. And Napier convinces Gordon to stop using the Batman Devastation Fund to just follow around Batman and rebuild buildings. He wants to reappropriate it to create what he calls the Gotham Terror Oppression, or the GTO. Gotham Terror Oppression just sounds like the most authoritarian name I've ever heard in my life.
A bit. Not fan of the, not really a fan of the words used for it, but I get the idea.
Yeah. But the idea is to take the money in the Batman Devastation Fund and reappropriate it for the police department to create a special unit to handle Batman level threats. Which is a forward thinking idea. Instead of waiting for things to go wrong, let's use that money to stop things from going wrong. And Napier's idea actually gets over. He and Harleen Quinzel have a night of passion, and Harley asks Jack to marry her.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting scene only because of the level of undress in it. It's somehow touching, but a little uncomfortable.
Jack is in there very worried about his mental state and how easy he can just fall back.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's still readily medicated to keep his balanced structure. Or his mental structure, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to be careful about that at all times, let alone what that can mean for a potential child. But meanwhile, the Neo Joker has decided to attack Gotham with the supervillains. And the Batman, Nightwing, and Batgirl respond in kind. What follows is a very big smackdown that involves a bunch of near misses, including Jim Gordon getting hit in the face with a bat signal. And thankfully, Bruce catches him and manages to roll through so that Jim is okay. But at the same time, Gordon has had enough of defending Batman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't say if it's because Napier's gotten into his head and given him something to think about, or if it's because something is finally boiled over. But either way, he's had enough of Batman's way of handling things. And instead of waiting for Batman to disappear behind him, he's the one that walked away from Batman this time around.
I did like that.
That was a nice callback to the stereotype of Batman's disappearances. I did like the image of Napier back at his apartment trying on the Mad Hatter headband to figure out why he can't control the villains, and then there's Harley Quinn just getting dressed, just swearing the cops are going to come, thinking this is them, they have to go.
Mm-hmm.
But Neo Joker shows up at Napier's apartment and threatens him 3 different ways to try and coax the Joker out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of trying to hurt the man who she sees as imprisoned the Joker, she's going to create enough of a mess in Gotham, he won't have a choice but to go back.
Trying to play to Joker's ego.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Napier is still holding fast to his plan, and he's offering a spot in the Gotham Terror Oppression Unit to both Nightwing and Batgirl under the provision that they won't have to unmask or give their identities to anyone. Which is interesting. I don't know how you can foster trust in that situation, but there it is. And the first thing they're doing with the funds from the Batman Devastation Fund is taking some cars from Impound and souping them up as well as they can to make them pseudo-Batmobiles.
Yeah, I don't...
I said as much as they can.
As much as they can. You building a Batmobile of that caliber, you start from the ground. You don't retrofit the car.
No, but they're also given limited time and means. It's not like they can wait for someone to build them a Batmobile. For the time being, you're going to have to do the best you can with more standardized items.
Yeah, admittedly, I think that's what Batman first did for his first Batmobile.
More or less, yeah. And then we find out the actual history of Neo Joker, who was a bank teller who had her own mental difficulties. She unfortunately was physically harming herself. But then the Joker showed up one day, forced her to do a robbery, and I guess for lack of a better term, he just kind of dressed her up in the costume, took minor care of her, and she took those minor kindnesses for actual affection. Gave her a bizarre reason to live. But that's more or less where it ends. There's a minor revelation at the end, but it'd be a bit more detail than you need. So, Jesse, what'd you think of these 4 issues?
I mean, aside from some unnecessary collateral damage on Batman's part, that seems be forced in my opinion, this is a very good read.
It's provocative. It's very rare that you find a comic that breaks down a hero and shows you what it's doing wrong without turning it into the absolute problem. I mean, it does address both the good and bad things that Batman does.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very curious to. I just enjoyed the read. I like the juxtaposition. Somebody took a very three-dimensional look at Batman and his tactics and tries to help figure out how good is this.
I looked at this from the point when I started realizing of the cherry picking of continuities and whatnot. This seems like one of the. Now I'm going to use the term fanfic as not an insult. It felt very much like someone's fanfic of picking and choosing good qualities from various continuities and piecing it together.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a better example of it. It's again, as I said, this is a very good read.
Yeah.
I still have problems with some of the inciting incidents, but that's a me problem.
Okay. What do you think? Is this a reader?
9?
Really?
Yeah, 9.
You're a bit of a mystery to me because I find that you're really into some things and not very into others. But I'm not going to say it's inconsistent. It's just it never goes where I believe it's going to.
Oh, where'd you think I was going to go?
I thought you'd say it was okay, but it's not your type of story.
To be honest, it's not my type of story. Again, but I have to admit this was a great read because I whipped through it very fast without feeling like I was being bored or being lectured to.
Yeah, I mean, I am not a Batman fan. I don't think the character has much of a place in modern storytelling, as well as, unfortunately, a lot of writers, if they don't make him do cliches, they make him the cliche. I get tired of the answer as to how did he do that being because he's Batman.
And I don't hate Batman as much as you or Joanne do, but I feel he's better served as a mystery comic,
Mm-hmm.
or not a superhero comic.
Possibly. But at the same time, though, this addresses all the good and the bad about Batman as far as pop culture and cliches, and just really tries to, I don't want to say spin it into something new, but just allows it to breathe more and grow as a concept rather than stay the same. So I do encourage people to read this regardless of whether you're a fan of Batman. I think there's something in this for a lot of different people. So I think we'll leave it right about there for now. You got anything you wanted to read upcoming?
Is the Rise of the Constructicons still on the table?
It's on the table, but the story's not finished. 3 out of 4 issues are out.
Really? When's in that? Never mind. We'll figure that out later.
I think the 4th one is due at the end of this month, but because of the dual holidays, it's kind of hard to guarantee I can get everybody in one place to record anything.
Yeah, I keep asking for it, and I keep getting the same answer.
Well, look, I'm keeping track of it. It's just not ready yet. Actually, I have 2 suggestions. One of which is finished, one of which is not.
Okay.
There's either the Boom Studios Once and Future. 4 issues are out, but the first arc isn't done. Or we can go and delve into a different style of storytelling and read like the first 5, maybe 6 issues of the latest volume of West Coast Avengers. That was a relatively new, like, young heroes team that was led by Kate Bishop Hawkeye and mentored by Clint Barton Hawkeye. And it was an eclectic group of characters. I mean, we're talking Quentin Quire and Gwenpool and yeah, just a bunch of people who really shouldn't get along in one place.
I'm morbidly curious about that, to be honest.
So you want to do that next week, and we'll hold off on Once and Future for at least like one more issue coming out?
Sure.
Okay. So next week we'll do we'll do the first story arc. It'll be either 5 or 6 issues of the West Coast Avengers of 2018. Thank you very much for coming by, and hopefully Joanna's doing well, and hopefully we'll hear from her soon. In the meantime, I look forward to talking to more people about stuff, and yeah, I hope everybody has a great time and tunes into both the next episode of this podcast as well as The Experts, our new X-Men related podcast. Have a great one, everybody. Enjoy the holidays. I am Jeremy.
And I'm Jesse.
Thank you for coming. The Cosmic Library is now closed.